Dear colleagues, dear participants, and highly evaluated panelists, I would like to welcome you to our session on the judiciary reform in Ukraine and the restoration of justice, as well as the establishment of compensation mechanisms. As you know, rule of law is a basic for each democracy. Rule of law actually now is important in Ukraine to give a strong signal for a good environment climate, and that means for reconstructions and for attracting foreign supporters to go to Ukraine. But I would like to underline that our at the first time, very different topics, they are very interlinked each other. Because if we want to legitimate long-term support, sustainable support of Ukraine by the partner countries and the populations in the partner countries in that crucial war of Russia against Ukraine, it is important that the taxpayers know that not only they will support Ukraine financially, but also that the aggressor will pay for the mass destruction he caused. And to do that, we need a compensation mechanism, and such a mechanism also should be based on the rule of law. So our very challenging topics, they are two sides of one medal. I now would like Mrs. Vice Commissioner Vera Jourova to give a keynote and to introduce us into the broader context of the issue. I would like to warn you, Mrs. Jourova, we are very sorry to say that, has a flight directly after her keynote. She has to leave us, so be not surprised. And I also would like to declare here that Irina Mudra has the same problem. She has to leave us at 17:15. Don't be surprised. But we are nevertheless very happy to have you with us. And please, the floor is yours, Mrs. Jourova. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. Good afternoon. Thank you for your applause. A double one, oh Lord, what a day in Berlin. I'm really delighted to be here today. This conference, hosted in the European Union for the first time, is more than symbolic. The opening of accession negotiations last December redefined Ukraine's recovery and reconstruction as steps towards EU membership. This ambitious goal is fraught with challenges, especially amidst ongoing conflict, yet it presents a unique opportunity. The European accession process, particularly its emphasis on rule of law reforms, is pivotal for Ukraine's sustainable recovery and reconstruction. Ukraine's reconstruction is a moral and political imperative, as is the fact that the aggressor has to pay. Let me elaborate on three key aspects of that process: justice reform, tackling corruption, and ensuring media freedom. I will start with justice. Ongoing reforms to Ukraine's justice system are necessary not only for EU accession, but for the correct delivery of state functions to all Ukrainian citizens. This includes, for example, the appointment of Supreme Court judges and ordinary judges, but also the digitalization of justice, a goal we also strive for in the EU. And a strong justice system is equally important for Ukraine's recovery. As most cases of war crimes fall on the shoulders of Ukraine's judicial institutions, Ukraine's justice system must be strong enough to bear this burden. This is why we support Ukraine's electronic case management system. There are over 133,000 incidents currently registered in the national portal, as well as ongoing investigations into 695 suspects for the crime of aggression and 15 investigations into alleged cases of ecocide. Digitalization will improve efficiency here as well. There are still important reforms to put in place. For example, Ukraine's criminal code should align definitions of core international crimes with international standards. And even new institutions are not immune to corruption. Backsliding is always possible, so reforms need to be done in a sufficiently solid and sustainable way. The reform as the part of Ukraine's accession to the EU should ensure justice for crimes committed during and beyond the war and enhance citizens' lives and business environment. This brings me to the second point. Eliminating corruption is a fundamental part of upholding the rule of law and essential for EU membership. But together with an effective justice system, it also has macroeconomic relevance and a positive impact on the business environment, investments, growth and jobs. This is why in the EU we look at this as part of our own coordination and surveillance of economic and social policies, and why reforms in these areas for EU member states are part of their COVID-19 recovery plans for which they receive financial support. It is important to see Ukraine's anti-corruption track record improving year on year. Progress is recognized in Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index this year, where Ukraine climbed 12 positions. This is one of the best results globally. Eliminating corruption will also allow Ukraine to reap the full benefit of financial support from the international community for recovery and reconstruction. From the EU, this includes €50 billion already from the Ukrainian facility, as well as billions more in windfall revenues from immobilized Russian assets. 10 years ago, during the Revolution of Dignity, the commitment to tackling corruption was already clear. The work of a group of volunteers from civil society with the National Ministry produced a transparent procurement model to restore public trust in procurement. Today, we see a renewed commitment here throughout the entire political spectrum and civil society for reforms that are not only essential for EU accession, but which will strengthen Ukraine's recovery and reconstruction. Thirdly, with regard to media freedom, this is essential for EU membership because a democracy can only survive if free and plural media are present. Media freedom gives citizens agency and the freedom to decide their own future. It is a pillar of the rule of law and enabler of democracy and critical for fighting disinformation. There are threats to media freedom everywhere, including in the EU. I have been on a democracy tour to discuss this with member states and see how can we better prepare ourselves against hybrid threats, foreign interference and disinformation. I have also just returned from the United States, where I met with the tech companies to see if they were also doing their homework and how we can best cooperate. One of the most frequently used topics for disinformation is Russian aggression against Ukraine. This is precisely why journalists must be able to do their job freely and safely to ensure that citizens have access to impartial information. It is why we are happy to support projects like Media Lifeline Ukraine that has protected over 1,000 journalists and provided safety equipment. Media freedom is improving in Ukraine, including the media law that introduced transparency in ownership and regulation mechanisms. Now it is crucial to have an independent media regulator. This will guarantee freedom and pluralism in this sector. It is part of rule of law reform and a necessary condition for EU membership. But it is also essential for public trust and to ensure Ukrainian citizens are well informed of Ukraine's recovery and reconstruction. As research shows, the less trusted the media and the higher perception of its politicization, the more people search for other sources. To briefly conclude, today Ukraine has the strategic objective of becoming a member state of the European Union. This is also the Union's objective. Ukraine is fighting a war for our common values. As the EU is based on the rule of law, The speed of Ukraine's accession largely depends on progress in this regard as well as in other areas. But there is a major benefit of this process in that the necessary reforms will strengthen the recovery and reconstruction process. Moreover, by upholding the rule of law as a basis for a strong economy and the consolidation of democracy, Ukraine is also investing for future generations of Ukrainians as well as for shared peace, security, stability and prosperity in Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Vice President, and have a good flight. Everything there. Thank you. Bye-bye. Dear colleagues, by the way, my name is Wilfried Jilge. I'm a senior advisor on Ukraine and wider Black Sea region as a stabilization platform in Berlin, advising to German stakeholders of foreign policy on support of Ukraine. I would like now to introduce our great panelists and speakers. On the left, I would like to welcome Maria Pecinovic-Buric, the Secretary General of the Council of Europe. Yes, the preeminent pan-European international organization in the field of human rights, democracy and rule of law. Prior, Ms. Pecinovic has been Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign and European Affairs of the Republic of Croatia. And as we know, your time now is reaching the end of your 5 years mandate, and you had a very interesting time, let me say that. You managed to lead the organization through COVID. Now you have the Russian aggression against Ukraine, and we will speak with you and on the next challenges which I had. On the right, I have the pleasure to welcome Mrs. Irina Mudra, a famous Ukrainian lawyer, politician, financial expert. She is now the deputy head of the office of the president of Ukraine. And she already has been appointed at the beginning of the war as a deputy minister of justice, dealing from beginning with the development and implementation of a compensation mechanism, but you are also deeply in working on rule of law reforms. It is nice to have you with us. Thank you. To go further, I'm very happy to see and thank you that you all, by the way, made your way from Kiev to us. It's Mr. Hiyori Usik, the chairman of the High Council of Justice of Ukraine. He is a judge with more than 28 years of experience, so you know the whole history of reforms in Ukraine. It is nice to have you with us. You are also a judge of the Supreme Court, and you have been elected the chairman of the High Council of Justice, an independent self-governance body of Ukraine's justice, and we can say you are living evidence of the last reforms Ukraine has notably made. Thank you so much for coming. We have on the left, I would like to welcome the Parliamentary State Secretary of the Federal Ministry of Justice of Germany, Mr. Benjamin Strasser. Thank you very much. Since 2017, you have been a member of the German Bundestag as a full member and chairman of the Committee of Internal Affairs, responsible for all internal security issues, what is also not bad for our panel. I'm very happy that you are with us. Thank you. And then we have also, having made the way from Kiev to us, I'm very happy, Victoria Melnik, the head of International Relations and European Integration at the Center of Policy and Legal Reforms. Your center is a very prominent center in advocating and developing reforms in the, let me say, realm of European integration, and you are actually the head of that project of European integration in your center. It's nice, Victoria, that you have your expertise with us. And David Warren, David on the left. David is from USID, Ukraine Justice for All activity. He currently serves here as a chief of that organization, which is designed to advance justice for all Ukraine. So that is very important for us in the discussion, the inclusive approach by strengthening justice systems, services, societal engagement, to engage also people in the reform. And thank you I would like to begin with you, Mrs. Secretary General. What has the Council of Europe, from your point of view, done so far to support Ukraine in the area of judicial reform? Can you give us an introduction on that? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You hear me? Yeah. Thank you very much for this question. Actually, it goes without saying, Council of Europe has 3 pillars of its work, and one of them is the rule of law. So obviously, all of our member states have to adjust to the best standards that we have at the Council of Europe. So this is to say that we were active in Ukraine since the very beginning. However, there are 2 events, recent events, that framed even more importantly this issue as our cooperation activity with Ukraine. One is, of course, this horrible and illegal war of aggression of Russian Federation against Ukraine, which, in addition to what we were aiming to do on different general issues on reforming judiciary, we needed to start assisting Ukraine on reforming the judiciary in the terms to respond directly to the issues that are linked with this aggression, namely the Prosecutor General and the courts investigation and investigators and others. And second was already mentioned by the Vice President of the Commission, Jourova, where the candidate status that is wonderful that the European Union decided to grant to Ukraine also frames the assistance of Council of Europe to Ukraine, but not only to Ukraine. We have been always active helping candidate countries for membership in the European Union through the acquis, which is actually what is the political criteria mainly coincides for the European Union, mainly coincides with the acquis within human rights and a rule of law section of our 3 pillar, which includes also democracy. So this, by saying this, I wanted to mention that we also adjusted with the war of aggression immediately our action plan, and actually we have the biggest office in Ukraine outside of Strasbourg, and the action plan that we already had, we immediately adjusted to this war situation where we targeted different things, and some of them also were mentioned by the Mrs. Commissioner Jourova. Of course, the reform of judiciary, but equally targeting the fight against corruption, all what is economic crime as well, including also crime of the fight against corruption, and also the freedom of expression, including freedom of media and all the others. So as you can see, even from the areas we cover, that actually what we do there goes in synergy what also other actors are active in Ukraine. So to make it more concrete, I can tell you that our assistance to adjust to this war situation is since from the very beginning, and I can tell you that I had the call from the then Prosecutor General as early as the beginning of March 2022, where she asked for our assistance for gathering the evidence, because if we want accountability, that we will talk later, we need to gather evidence on gross human war crimes and gross human rights violations in a proper sense, that it can be tried by national or international fora. So we started with that immediately. We continue through the action plan, helping the Office of the Prosecutor General, in particularly with regard to war crime parts, helping capacity building of prosecutors and investigators in that term. We also were helping Ukraine on harmonizing the criminal code related to these issues, so that and of course applying European Convention on Human Rights by the prosecutors and investigators. But when coming to the general reform of judiciary, and I'm very happy that we have here the judge representing the High Council of Judiciary, because one of the concrete results that we have achieved are also this. So we've seen very positive developments recently in the judicial system by restructuring the system of disciplinary responsibility, where the High Council of Judiciary is the most important institution, and we are very happy to see fully operational institution, and I'm very glad that you will certainly follow up and saying how you work on that. And another pillar, which is the career of judges, which is also fully operational. And actually, at this moment, Ukraine has high qualifications commission of judges. So these two are really crucial for the real deep and large reform of judiciary. And the last but not least, adoption and implementation of transferring judges, between the former Supreme Court judges to the new one. So all that, and coming back to where I started, as a member of the Council of Europe, Ukraine is a member of, is a party to the European Convention on Human Rights, and the European Court on Human Rights is actually the one that, through its judgments, actually make case laws which are helping us to guide us through what needs to be done, through whether it's national remedies or others that are already targeted through this case law where we need to help. But already with some things that I mentioned, we have moved ahead in that.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Secretary General, for that, to tell us that you not only support Ukraine in the course of reforms, but also help to come to terms with the challenge of the aggression of Russia against Ukraine. Thank you so much. Irina Mudra, how do you think, how does the government's reform agenda or the reform agenda of the Ukrainian leadership in the area of judiciary look like at the moment? And maybe you can us a little bit tell us about the next steps which have to become. Thank you. And please keep the 3 minutes. I can hear you. Do you hear? No, as the public doesn't. Can we?
Okay. Do you hear me?
Now I think,
that's
yeah.
Good, thank you. Well, for Ukraine, it's important not only to win the war, but it is important to win the peace. And of course, the continuation of the progress in implementation of judiciary reform, of justice reform, is part of our plan how to win the peace. Because we have to make the country attractive, not only for our people, because we want our people get back to their houses, homes, but also for investors. We have to ensure that judicial system in the country is business-friendly and transparent, independent, and efficient ones. Ukraine already demonstrated strong progress and commitment to justice reform aimed at securing rule of law and human rights. And one of the most important reforms is a judiciary reform, because all of us are aware that a transparent, efficient, independent, trustworthy judicial system is the key to ensuring the rule of law, increase investment, attractiveness, and protection of human rights and interest of the states. So what Ukraine as the state does in the direction of judiciary reform, I will remind that it started in 2016 after the corresponding amendments to the Constitution of Ukraine have been introduced. So the main priority areas for the development of the justice system are ensuring sustainable functioning of the judicial system and its further development, ensuring institutional capacity of judicial governance and independence of judges. What is critical today in judiciary system? The shortage of judges. So the first key priority is the staffing of the judiciary. It's important to continue conducting competitions to the courts of first instance and appellate courts, to the High Anti-Corruption Court, to Constitutional Court. So today, between 22 to 62% of judicial positions remain vacant. More than 1,100 competitions have already been announced by High Council of Justice and are pending due to renewal of these two key judicial bodies, High Council of Justice and High Qualification Commission. Now they are well equipped and resourced and able to conduct transparent, merit-based competitions for judges with proper integrity checks. And today we have more than 200 judges who are waiting for the appointment. And myself and the President's office are very committed to appoint these judges as quick as possible. Also, 35 judges to be selected and appointed to the High Anti-Corruption Court. And this selection and competition is also ongoing. The second key priority in the judicial system is the completion of the qualification assessment of judges. Almost 50% of judges have not passed the assessment to continue to administer justice. So this is also of paramount importance, and the judicial governance bodies are dealing with this. The appointment by the President of Ukraine of judges based on the High Council of Justice proposal and swearing in of the newly appointed judges. So we expect that these 200 judges will be appointed the beginning of July, and they will be able to start their service as quick as possible. The next key priority is the establishment of the High Administrative Court. The High Administrative Court is a new court for administrative cases involving national state bodies staffed by judges who have been vetted for professional competency and integrity. The need to create the High Administrative Court is stipulated in a few documents with our signed with our partners. It's in a memorandum with International Monetary Fund. It is in Ukraine facility plan. It is in U.S. budget support framework. So it's our commitment, and we are working on this. Very important to have a new network of local courts. Optimization of the network of local courts in accordance with the new administrative governance territorial structure, which was changed a few years ago, but unfortunately the network of courts have not been changed. That's why it's also in the strategy of the justice reform. It's very important to have ensuring institutional capacity of judicial governance and independence of judges. Very important issue of independence of judges. And there are still vacancies in the High Council of Justice, in the Constitutional Court, and these procedures for selecting the candidates to the Constitutional Court and High Council of Justice are ongoing. There are also problems, and it will be the problems of the judicial system in the context of war. Because restoration of justice in the deoccupied territories is associated with the following measures: development of an algorithm for restoring and functioning of courts in the deoccupied territories, development of a professional reserve of judges and court staff to restore and administer justice. Of course, development of a collection and systems of information on damage caused on the judicial system, and logistical support of courts. So after Ukraine, and I'm definitely sure Ukraine will win this war, after the winning the war, the immediate demand will be justice and accountability. Justice inside the state, which will be ensured by transparent, independent, efficient, and honest courts. But also we will request and require from our international partners restoration of justice in the global system, in the global legal order, and accountability for Russian Federation. And I will ask to apologize myself that I have to leave, but I will ask to substitute myself by Markian Kluchkovsky. He was staying in the origin of the compensation mechanism, and he will tell what are the steps in the development of compensation mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mudra. I got two very important points of you. So at first you give us a huge agenda what has to be done, but also what has been done, and was what you said, that we had already progress in the self-governance bodies of the judiciary, what is a precondition for an independent justice, but what is also very, I think, challenging not only for Ukraine but also for the partners. You spoke about capacities, and I think it is also here a signal to the partners how we can help Ukraine to fill in the time of a lack of human resources, to fill capacities with new talented judges, prosecutors, and specialists of public administration. So thank you very much for that, and you are free if you need to go. So, and I will happy to welcome Markian. If you want, you can already join us. It's simply great that Ukraine has a good team here, and we have simply we can replace with high-level people. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Usyk. My question to you, I mean, we already have now these first reforms, and you are one of those who accompanied these reforms. How can we make that reforms also irreversible? How to further implement and make them lively, these reforms? Can you a little bit elaborate on that? Thank you.
Дякую за запрошення до слова.
Thank you for giving me the floor. The progress that Ukraine has achieved in developing the rule of law and the judicial system, as the previous speakers have said, is quite evident. And the key bodies to make sure that the judicial reform is irreversible are the renewed and the reformed according to the new rules of selection with participation of international experts, High Council of Justice, and the High Qualification Commission of Judges of Ukraine. It is the High Council of Justice that is responsible for ensuring independence of judges and accountability of the judiciary to the society, and also for the formation of the judicial corps with high level of integrity, professionalism, not only through the appointment procedure, but by cleansing the judiciary against the judges with low integrity through the disciplinary procedure. Within this context, I'd like to say that at the moment, we have in the active stage a competitive procedure of selection of judges for the vacancies for the Service of Disciplinary Inspectors. It's a new agency within the judicial system that will be functionally independent of any pressure, that will be responsible for all the procedure of preliminary checks of disciplinary complaints against the judges, that will make their conclusions and initiate disciplinary proceedings against judges if needed. Another important agency to make sure that the judicial reforms are irreversible, as they said, is the restored High Qualification Commission of Judges of Ukraine, which is responsible for making sure that the judiciary are transparent, independent, and based on the criteria of professional ethics, that this is the competitive procedure of selection of judges. At the moment, we have about 2,000 vacancies of judges in Ukraine. That's quite a large number. And the additional staffing, the addition of those judges that would be highly professional with a high level of integrity, that should change the face of the judicial system. And in general, make sure that the judicial reform is completed and it is irreversible. What is also very important, an important role is played in ensuring the rule of law and democracy in Ukraine is played by the Constitutional Court of Ukraine, which at the moment is under reform through the procedure of a competitive selection of new judges with participation of the ethical panel of experts, which has international experts with a high level of integrity and authority delegated by our partners. So I think that the work of those key bodies of judicial self-governance should make sure that the judicial reform is irreversible. Thank you very much, Mr. Usik.
Mr. Usik, I would like now to ask Mr. Parliamentary State Secretary Strasser, why are the judicial reforms and the rule of law, why are they of so paramount importance for European Union and the accession process and also for the reconstruction of the country? Can you a little bit elaborate on that? Thank you.
Yeah, first of all, I think there are two main reasons why judicial reforms and the rule of law is essential. The first reason is the war in Ukraine, as we see it, is not only a war about territory. It's also a war about values. On the one side, imperialistic dictatorship which wants to conquer Ukraine, and on the other side, a liberal democracy fighting for peace, freedom, and prosperity for our common values. And therefore, as Mrs. Mudra said it, we all hope that Ukraine will win this war soon. But it's not only in winning this war, the task is to secure peace. And therefore, Ukraine has to be a nation based on the rule of law. To secure the rule of law for all of their citizens, the equality in front of the law for all of their citizens, and therefore it's crucial that Ukraine has an effective, independent judiciary which are making decisions based on the rules, on the rule of law, and that's what we are fighting for. That's the first reason. The second reason is the European Union. We all want that Ukraine will become part of the European Union, and therefore in the accession process, which is meritocracy-based, these chapters, the chapters building of rule of law, independent judiciary, fighting corruption, for the European Union are very important chapters, even due to our expectations with the rule of law in EU memberships. There's some developments which are concerning. Therefore, new candidates have to fulfill this hard tasks and fulfilling the things to live the rule of law. And therefore, on a German perspective, Ukraine has made impressive progress under the circumstances of the war, but there are still some way to go. It's not just change the legislation, it's even in living these new rules, bring it to life, change the culture, the mentality in the judiciary, and therefore we as Germans don't leave Ukraine alone on this long way to EU membership. With our opportunities we can offer to Ukraine, like our foundation. I'm president of the URC, our legal foundation for legal cooperation. We're working with Ukraine since 1992 on different various topics, and I'm very glad and happy that the German Bundestag decided that we get on this foundation 1 million plus for Ukraine, for Moldova, and for Georgia on this process. On Georgia we have to look, but for Ukraine and Moldova to advise, to support Ukraine on this judicial reforms and the way to the rule of law.
Thank you so much, Mr. Strasser. I would like to go ahead with Victoria. Excuse me. Victoria, how the reform of judiciary should be completed, and what should be, let me say, guiding principles for that reform. Maybe you can give us insight from the point of view of civil society. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I hope you heard me well. First of all, thank you for hosting me today. And first of all, I want to say that in another situation, here it can be another person, Roman Kuybida, who is not only the leading expert within our center, but also the leading expert within the civil society in Ukraine, and who made a great impact for judicial reform. But now he is on the front line. He decided to defend our country from the enemy and give us this opportunity to be here and speak about our future. And I want to say that many of the representatives of civil society sacrificed on the front line for our future. And first of all, I think that most important guiding principle for our reforms, European integration, and also recovery is the military support and weapons for Ukraine to defend and give us this possibility. And here I want to say thank you for our defenders that I can be here and speak about Ukraine. And also I want to thank all of you who support Ukraine. And I want to ask you to do this in the future to our freedom, peace, and security. As we speak about judicial reform, it is important to know that one key element that we need now is the vision of the reform. Not just a strategic document to develop, to do something, but made this vision where we want to be and what we need to do. And now we have this window of opportunity with negotiation process. And we need to understand what our priorities and what task we need to stipulate it for us. And here we can speak also about the clear tasks and fair deadlines for this. Now it is important to us to develop the roadmap, and actually we hope that we also do the strategic document for the reform, and also we can speak about some important issues. Of course, we have this four main blocks for our reform: independence, accountability, effectiveness, and efficiency. But also we need to think what we need to do with the court networks, how we can build these court networks that should be sufficient for our situation, for our challenges, and so on. And also what we need to do with the some maybe problematic issues like commercial courts, what we can do and how we can manage our system in the line of European standards. Also, here it is important to speak about accountability mechanism, because one of the priority now for us is made them effective accountability issues, because sometimes we are speaking a lot about independence, but at the same time we need to speak about accountability, because we can make imbalance if we prioritize one of the blocks of these systematic issues. Here we can speak about the role of the Public Integrity Council. For us, actually, it is important to give and strengthen this capacity to work of this Public Integrity Council and made the impact. And also it's like a role of civil society during judicial reform, which is so important, not only during the monitoring, but also during development of the strategic documents and also a roadmap. And we are happy that we saw the sign from the Vice Deputy Prime Minister Stefanishina on the inclusiveness of the process of development, this roadmap, and we hope that we have the same with the actually strategic document. And I'm happy that Mr. Rusek speak about the disciplinary service. We're happy that we already developed this process, and we need to make more steps to make this institution effective and actually starting the work, because it is now important for us. And of course, we need to speak about the negotiation process, because it is also important to underline that the result of the reform and the achievements also depends from the negotiation framework and the benchmarks from EU. Here we need to speak about improvement of the process of benchmarking and finding of the balance between clarity and flexibility of the benchmarks for Ukraine. Because now we have a situation in some countries, candidate countries, with some frustration of the reforming process, and we are ready to do these reforms. It is first of all important for Ukrainian citizens and for our own development. But at the same time, we need to understand that we have a chance to be the part of the EU, not only when we are speaking today, but also as a result of the negotiation process, and this can help us to achieve result in reforming process, but also to make a like proper and stable dynamic of the negotiation process.
Thank you very much, Victoria, for that. Also, for perspectives, what has also still to be done, yes, but I think what is also very important, what you mentioned, that also in the time of war, the cooperation between civil society and the stakeholders remains and continues. And I think that is a very important issue, because I think the so-called sandwich strategy, where donors, civil society and the stakeholders are working together, should be kept also in the time of war, but maybe even intensified. Yes, thank you so much. And David Warren, can you tell us about already a little bit about the things inside, about the role of integrity, of professionalism. It's not only about independence, it's also to get the best people in these institutions, and to actually assure confidence to that reformed bodies in the society. Thank you.
Thank you. Szanowni Panie ta Panowie.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, first of all, I want to welcome everybody on behalf of USAID program. I'm very happy to see here very many people that I know so well in Berlin. Well, I know most of you. I understand Ukrainian, but now I will speak in English. I'm sorry for it.
Dear colleagues, before I drill down on the issue of judicial ethics and integrity, I just want to say a few words about how our project pivoted to respond to the needs of the justice sector following the full-scale invasion. We pivoted first to focus on ensuring continuity of court operations, and that included providing equipment to damaged and destroyed courts. And we actually now are building a new court in Berezyanka, which was destroyed in the early days of the war. So ensuring continuity of court operations is one of our core pivots. The second pivot is expanding access to justice for vulnerable populations. That includes IDPs, women and children, to ensure that their justice needs are met. And the third pivot is focusing on promoting accountability for war crimes and damage caused by the war, which is what we'll talk about a little later during this session. But our core work still is focused on building the capacity of justice institutions to meet the needs, the legal needs of Ukrainians. And judicial integrity and professionalism is a key element to that, and promoting public trust and confidence in the independence and impartiality of the judiciary. And it's also important to promoting confidence by the business community and investors. We know from studies that there's a direct correlation between de facto judicial independence and GDP. So strengthening the integrity ecosystem requires a comprehensive approach that is focused on the legal framework, ensuring enforcement of ethical requirements, as well as raising public awareness amongst judges and the public alike. In terms of the legal framework, progress has been made because integrity is now codified and clearly defined in Ukrainian laws related to the judiciary, based on the UN Bangalore Principles for Judicial Conduct and standards set out by the European Network for Councils for the Judiciary, which granted the High Council of Justice as observer status last year. This new definition is now being used, as you heard, in evaluating the integrity and professionalism of sitting judges and candidates to fill vacancies, including involvement of civil society through the Public Integrity Council. Integrity and professionalism is also being used in vetting candidates for membership on judicial governance bodies, such as the High Council of Justice and the High Qualification Commission of Judges. A sound integrity ecosystem also requires a code of judicial ethics that sets out standards for conduct on and off the bench. And as we speak, the Council of Judges is working on modernizing the Code of Ethics for Judges, building on and reflecting these new integrity standards. To support enforcement of codes of ethics, the Council of Justice also prepared commentary to give life to provisions of the code and established an ethics committee that provides guidance to judges to avoid ethical violations in the first place. And they also provide advisory opinions published for other judges to consult when faced with ethical questions. Ongoing judicial education on integrity and ethics is also crucial to ensure proper enforcement, covering ethical standards and emerging challenges related to the use of social media, and a new challenge, considering war crimes cases when judges themselves may have been victims and witnesses, causing issues related to impartiality. Training and other resources should also be provided to judges, focused on ethical dilemmas and evaluating conflicts of interest. This includes online and offline courses on applying ethical standards in practice that are offered by the National School of Judges, as well as ethical decision guidelines and conflict of interest guides that help judges make those important decisions. Nevertheless, when ethical violations occur, there must be fair and transparent disciplinary procedures to hold judges accountable for misconduct. As you've heard, we're also working with our European partners to support the High Council of Justice with setting up a new service of disciplinary inspectors with integrity and professionalism to investigate complaints of misconduct by judges, which should be fully operational later this year. Ultimately, public trust and confidence will require developing tools and procedures for informing and educating the public about developments related to integrity and ethics in the judiciary, and this should include publishing disciplinary decisions. This additionally includes advising the public and businesses alike on mechanisms for reporting judicial misconduct and impropriety, including a complaint procedure that can be not only used to raise awareness about these procedures, but also improve the processing of complaints. Lord Ewart in the UK in the 1920s once said that justice must not only be done, but should be manifestly and undoubtedly be seen to be done. As this suggests, Strengthening the integrity ecosystem, promoting judicial accountability, and communicating the results will help to promote public trust and confidence in the judiciary.
Thank you very much, David, for that, because I think it's very important that you gave us guidelines how to fill now the legal progress we have on the paper, yes, and you showed us also that that will be a very long process. You cannot build up a new justice system in a few years, and we should know that when we assess the progress fairly of Ukraine, and Ukraine has made notable fair, but it is in all countries, you need time to evolutionarily develop institutions. Thank you so much. Maybe a follow-up question to Mr. Usik. We already heard about from from Benjamin Strasser about how to support Ukraine in that reforms, or how to support Ukraine to make the reforms irreversible. Can you give us maybe in a very short time 2 ideas what can be done from the side of your supporters, of your partners?
First of all, I would like to thank our international partners for their support provided to Ukraine in this fight with Russian aggression, for the steadfast support in developing judiciary system in Ukraine. In particular, I'm speaking about expert methodological assistance. I will briefly focus on the main directions, in my opinion, the main changes required in the judiciary and required by the society of Ukraine. It is related to the system of specialized courts. We currently have discussions about creation and development of High Administrative Court of Ukraine, and as Ms. Irina Mudra mentioned, it will consider cases related to the National Agency on Prevention of Corruption, National Bank of Ukraine, and other central bodies and senior officials. We are also working on creation of high specialized courts to address investments, disputes, and the issues of war tribunals. I think that Germany, as a country who has a complex system of courts, can provide us support in terms of ensuring functioning of these specialist courts, and this experience will be highly appreciated. I would also like to focus on such a direction as development of a new network of courts. It is also very important to develop alternative ways to consider disputes, and these alternative ways would decrease the burden which is currently put on judiciary. I also think that we need to have the necessary legislative framework to reform the bar system. It is part of the system of judiciary of Ukraine, but until now the bar remains without reforms. We can see some problems related to the lack of the 2 members that are not delegated by the bar. Success of any reform and judiciary reform in particular depends on the people who implement it, as well as material and technical assistance. And the President, the Parliament of Ukraine, and the government of Ukraine focus on ensuring energy security, defense, social guarantees for the most vulnerable groups of population, and financing of judiciary consists in 60% of what is necessary, and of course it's not enough for all the measures that have to be taken. The courts of the first appellate instance don't have sufficient framework for exercising their functions. I would like to seize this opportunity to appeal to our international partners and their governments who provide financial assistance. We are very grateful for that. I would like to ask to direct a certain part of this assistance to the judiciary. Thank you very much.
I think that also helps us and gives us an orientation how to go forward with the support. We now discussed the preconditions for our next topic, and Mrs. Secretary General, you are representing a very important institution when it comes to the restoration of justice and let me say the collecting of damages of cases and how to go, for example, to a compensation mechanism. The Council of Europe has already done very much. Can you a little bit elaborate how we can hold Russia accountable and what you are doing in that field?
Well, accountability is a key word of what we do for Ukraine. And since the very early morning on the 24th of February 2022, actually, we were out with the declaration condemning and asking Russian Federation to withdraw on that morning. Otherwise, it will be excluded from the Council of Europe. And indeed, they did not withdraw. And they were excluded in record time because there was actually no other way to respond to that situation. So we were aware of the accountability for the organization from this very beginning. I mentioned our assistance to the Prosecutor General that actually asked for assistance as early as March the same year. So we continue to work on that stage. But in different meetings with the President Zelensky, and I did go indeed at least once a year to discuss what more the Council of Europe could do for Ukraine. And then he started with two issues already in May 2022, asking to see whether Council of Europe can do something on the issue of setting up special tribunal on the crime of aggression. And also are asking in general this compensation mechanism, how can be established. So what became clear quite early on was that Council of Europe actually had a means to be very quick in setting up this register of damage, which is the first phase of international comprehensive mechanism through the way of having partial enlarged agreement, which means that now when the register is fully operational, we have 44 countries, all G7 members, and any country, willing country in the world can join the register. So if we were deciding to go on a regular treaty way, it would have taken at least 4 to 6 years in order to make it operational. So we did set up the register. We have the living person here, the director of the register, Markian Kliuchkovsky, and actually we did set it up in less than a year, which is a record time. And the idea was that the register actually defines the ways what kind of claims can be deposited and in what order they will be decided on. So the register started to be fully operational on the 2nd of April and it's based in The Hague. Earlier in March we opened the satellite office in Kyiv because we thought that it was important to have one office in Kyiv for people, also for visibility of the possibility to record the claims. And actually the first claims that were open for on the 2nd of April, we've seen hundreds of claims being deposited. By now, there are thousands, and that they, at this stage, concern only one type of claims, because we decided on a victim-centered approach, and we decided to start with residential property, because if we want to restore possibility, justice and possibility for people to come back, we were of the opinion, and the register now that it has its own life, it has also governing bodies, decided to start with this. Over the summertime, it will decide on other types of claims, and certainly the people will be able to deposit more type of claims to the register. But you are absolutely right. The register is the first necessary of the three phases. The second one is the commission, compensation commission, and actually the register and Markian and the governing bodies are working already on linking the work of the register with the future work and the establishment of the commission. But of course, the third one is also very important, which is the fund. How to once the claims are deposited, they are decided on. The commission has given the opinion how much the claims should be. What would fuel this important process. And to come back to to what President Zelensky asked from the Council of Europe was the second on the work on the how, because if we want to win the war and win the peace, as Irina rightly mentioned, we have to have accountability, and we have to certainly we should also address the crime of aggression. And the Council of Europe is actually very active within so-called core group that has 40 parties at this moment, or again G7 and others. And actually there is a very lively discussion on how this would be established. And again, the Council of Europe participates with an expert, legal expert working with it. And actually, again, if the core group decides on that, Council of Europe could also host such a tribunal to a special agreement. So we also kind of prepare for that, but the core group has to decide what would be finally the right way to approach this issue. So actually, whatever we do with Ukraine, we do with this accountability in mind. And I should not forget, it hasn't been mentioned yet, we also work as much as we can on the children of Ukraine, on children of Ukraine who have fled this horrible aggression to the member states of the Council of Europe and elsewhere, but also for children that have been illegally transferred, abducted and transferred either to Russian Federation proper or to Russian controlled territories of Ukraine. So I think there are many, many areas where we need to work on accountability in gaining peace, because accountability means justice. Justice, without a proper justice, we cannot win peace. And I'm very glad that very soon we will also have conference on peace in Ukraine and for Ukraine.
Thank you very much, because what you said shows that a multilateral organization, although Russia has tried to destruct multilateralism and international law, gained a new importance actually when it comes to the compensation mechanism and to the register of damage. And even before the war ends, we are already deep in the work of such institutions. Thank you very much. Markian Kluczkowski, you are the executive director of the register of damage. Can you design a little bit the next steps which could be made? And can you maybe give a little perspective when it comes to the questions how to get the money also from the aggressor? Because we know that is a controversial still question, because we have to frame it within international law. There are different approaches. Maybe you can give, or you can help us how to go ahead now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for these questions and for the possibility to be here. I did not plan to get on the stage today, but every improvisation needs to be thoroughly prepared, and we are nothing if not thoroughly prepared to always talk about the question of reparations and the effort to build a compensation mechanism. And building on the intervention of Madam Secretary General, the Claims Commission is the next important step in that process. This is not just me saying, it is in the statute of the Register of Damage that the register is just the first component of that international compensation mechanism. And 44 states that are parties to the Register of Damage have committed to work on establishment of the Compensation Commission. And furthermore, 94 states, members of the United Nations, in the resolution adopted of the General Assembly adopted in November of 2022, have stated about the need of an international compensation mechanism as a way to hold Russia accountable for its aggression against Ukraine and other violations of international law. There is we often talk about this as some sort of a controversial item, a controversial thing, but I just want to emphasize that the basis for all this work is absolutely the opposite of controversial. The basis of this work is the rule of international law, that a state that violates the international law has a duty to make reparation to the victim state for all these violations. So we take as the principle, we take that as the founding principle of all of our work. Of course, our work is complicated by the fact that the aggressor in this case just happens to be a big country that has a seat on the Security Council of the United Nations. So all the conventional ways to build this mechanism, unfortunately, are not available to us. So we have to find other ways to build it through the consensus of willing and able states, of states who hold dear the principles and values of international law. That work has started. That work has started in parallel as we work on operationalizing the Register of Damage, and I will not talk about that anymore because our sites are in the future. In July, we will have the first session, the first negotiating session over the instrument for establishment of a claims commission, and that will be a strong impetus to reach our goal. Our goal is to arrive at a concluded or at least finalized text of an instrument to establish a claims commission by the end of this year. In terms of international law, that's quite fast. And then the question of money, where does the money come from? It is the most important, the most asked question. My answer to this is as follows. We have to operate on the basis that Russia sooner or later will come to the terms with the reality that it will have to pay, as unlikely as it may sound today. However, in the event that it does not want to pay, it should not mean that the victims are not compensated. So we do have to take a look at the assets of Russia that are outside of its borders. We have to take a look at the 300 billion that are frozen in jurisdictions across the world, including here in the European Union. And we have to look for ways to use that money as sources of reparation payments to Ukraine and Ukrainians. These are difficult decisions. We are not oblivious to that. These are decisions that have not been done before because sovereign immunity is something that is respected in the civilized world. However, we also want to look for solutions within the confines of what is permitted by international law. We will never ask our partners, our friends, to violate international law, so we are looking for legal solutions. However, what we are seeing is that the legal case, a purely legal case for the use of these assets as reparation payments to Ukraine is more or less set. Whether we call it countermeasures, whether we call it something else, there is a legal basis to do that. The concerns and the fears that are expressed as grounds for why that is not impossible are in the political, economic and financial realm. All these fears can be dealt with. All these issues can be mitigated. We understand that there is a concern about creating a dangerous precedent when the assets of a sovereign state are taken without its consent. But what we should be concerned about is an even worse precedent of a permanent member of Security Council not facing any consequences for the war of aggression if we are not courageous enough to take that step. In the Register of Damage, we expect from 6 to 8 million claims. That will be by far the biggest international law-based reparations program in history. That makes sense considering the scope of damage and destruction in Ukraine. And we have to think about these 6 to 8 million victims for them to have a way to rebuild their lives, to get compensated, and to get a sense of justice for what had happened. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I think you gave us a very important insight. What will happen if we do not react to that situation, and if we maybe will only ask what is not possible, but we should better ask what can be done and how we can make things possible in the framework of international law. Mr. Strasser, how the partners of Ukraine perhaps can contribute to support Ukraine in the restoration of justice. Actually, Germany also has been done a lot. Maybe you can give us some examples. But I ask you all, we have to finish our question round. You get your question, David. And please keep a little bit in the timeline. Thank you.
I try to keep it short. For the restoration of justice, it is crucial that we hold Russia accountable for the war crimes in Ukraine. They did and they are still doing. There will be no justice when we're not bringing the responsible persons from Russia to court. And therefore, we support as German government the work of the ICC, the International Criminal Court. For example, our federal prosecutor general has structural investigations on war crimes in Ukraine, and furthermore measures. And we welcome the arrest warrants against Putin and others. And therefore, I think it would be good, it would be important for Ukraine to ratify the Rome Statute, because this upholds the unique and strong position of the ICC in this topic. But to be honest, the vast majority of cases will be taken to trial by Ukrainian authorities in the Ukraine, and this will be a colossal task for the judges in Ukraine. We in Germany help you on this task. Last year, our foundation, the URC, did some study trips, visits in Berlin for Ukrainian prosecutors to discuss questions related to the investigation and the prosecution of war crimes with our experiences here in Germany, and I think this is an important support to bring them to court and to give justice to the victims of this Russian aggression.
Thank you very much for that clear statement that we need really to hold Russia accountable. That is, I think, a consensus here, very important. Victoria, how can the reform of Ukraine's justice system contribute to the restoration of justice and fair compensation with regard to war crimes committed by the Russian Federation? What do you see, what is needed here?
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to say that all the reforms, which is included to the fundamental cluster, is important for recovery, reconstruction, and all these processes, because without of that, we cannot achieve the results. If I speak about the rule of law, of course, it is important to finish the reforming process, not only judiciary, but also prosecuting service, to grant this restoration of justice for victims of the war crimes. And of course, we need to understand that Ukraine under attack every day and every minute, which means that every minute we have a new victims of the war crimes and new people who are suffered from the Russian attacks. That's why we should understand that we saw the positive activity and work of the prosecutor service during the full-scale invasion on the assessment and checking all of these war crimes. But at the same time, we understand that we need more capacity for that. That's why we need to finish the reform and made all of the departments and the whole system effective. To make the possibility and to grant this restoration of justice. Here, of course, important to underline, first of all, prosecutor service, and I have maybe 3 top issues that we need to do. First of all, of course, we need to further improve legislation framework for the general prosecutor independence, because it is important to effectiveness of the whole prosecutor service and for further development and finishing of the reform. Also, we are speaking a lot about the judicial reform and some selection procedures. And of course, in judicial reform, we also have some challenges regarding to the selection process. But at the same time, we saw the positive impact of that issues and the instrument that we made. In the prosecution service, we need to make the same thing. We need to develop this mechanism for the selection procedure on the managerial position within the Office of the Prosecutor General and other things. And now also we have this window of the opportunity to reform the prosecutorial governance bodies, which is also important to the proper functioning of the system, because of course we're speaking about the judiciary, but we need to do the same to make them effective and to make them institutionally capable to do their work. Here we also need to develop a criteria to the selection procedure of the members of these 2 important bodies, Council of Prosecutors and also Qualification and Disciplinary Commission of Prosecutors. We need to increase their capacity, we need to understand what the vision, and we need to use this window of the opportunity to finish the reform.
Thank you very much, Victoria, for reminding us not only to speak about courts, but also about the other side, a functioning prosecution. Yeah. David, I think it's a good final question for you. Yes. With your experience, what are the lessons learned from when we speak about compensation mechanism, restoration of justice of the last years? What are your lessons learned?
Thank you, and I'll be brief. I just want to say a few words about our war crimes accountability work first, and that's divided into 4 key areas. It's strengthening the legal framework to ensure compliance with international standards related to international criminal law and international humanitarian law. Second, building the capacity of judges to handle this difficult case type. Reinforcing the ability of the courts to administer these cases, including dealing with large numbers of victims and witnesses. That's the third area. And the fourth is building the capacity of defense counsel to represent defendants in this case to ensure the right to fair trial and access to counsel. So that's really where our war crimes work is focused. But in terms of compensation, I've had the honor and privilege of working with Markian and then Deputy Minister Mudra more than 2 years on issues related to building compensation mechanisms, and this parallels the work that's being done by the Council of Europe. And over those 2 years, we've learned a number of different key lessons that I'd like to share with you on what's important in terms of developing accountability mechanisms. And this includes a holistic approach that's looking at both domestic and international mechanisms that ensure timely and cost-effective justice for victims. And this is a key element of the rule of law, pravovladia, which is enshrined in the Ukrainian Constitution at Article 8. The first lesson that we learned is the importance of engaging end users, including victims and survivors, as well as businesses and farmers, to receive feedback and ensure a data-driven, people-centered approach in designing compensation mechanisms. And I'll be brief. The second lesson is to build the capacity of governmental and non-governmental stakeholders to assist claimants in preparing, documenting, and filing claims. The third, and this was an important one that we learned, is the importance of promoting communications and public outreach to not only raise awareness, but manage expectations. And the fourth key element, and this is really leads to the work that the Register is doing, and this is establishing effective and interoperable domestic and international mechanisms for documenting and compensating damage for war. And this is key to ensure that evidence is collected in a timely manner, properly stored, protected, and accessible across a variety of platforms, as well as dispute and claims resolution venues. Here, I want to say there's special attention to be paid for victims and witnesses to ensure that they're not re-traumatized in the process of documenting and compensating for war damage, and to ensure they have access to redress at national and international levels, to ensure that they have adequate, effective, and prompt reparation for harm. This includes designing and implementing automated solutions that are integrated and interoperable, allowing for the electronic exchange of information. And this is where the register is really excelling in setting the standard in terms of interoperability and access through digital solutions. Taken together, these four areas, engaging end users, building the capacity of governmental and non-governmental stakeholders, promoting communication and outreach, and establishing effective and interoperable mechanisms will promote the interest of justice and expand the web of accountability in line with the expectations of individuals and businesses who have suffered loss. Dr. Martin Luther King said in the 1960s, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." In this context, our discussions today will play a force for good in holding accountable those responsible for atrocities and war-related damage while meeting the justice needs of those impacted by the war. Дякую.
Дякую тобі також. Thanks very much. I think you also gave a good compass to see how balance between maybe over-promising something and then under-delivering. And we see also what has to be done to give a good context for such restoration mechanisms. Thank you so much. I would like to look at the pen holders. He is phoning. Okay, then maybe we have. Yes, I mean the other ones also 20 minutes late. So maybe we have one or two questions here to our audience. I very appreciated your inputs because it was very concrete and very detailed. And I think. Yes, here's a question. Please, can you get a micro? And there also over there is a question. Is there any help here? Yeah. Okay, but you can. Where? Thank you.
Дякую. Мене чутно?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Tell us who should answer.
Сергій Ніж.
I'm Serhiy Nizhinsky. I'm head of an NGO, Ukraine UA Exports. We are a human rights organization supporting Ukrainian civilians, in particular those who suffered from sexual violence related to the conflict. We welcome the decision to set up the registry and to single out this type of crimes committed by the aggressor in our country. My question is as follows. How will the evidence be considered amongst the 52 military conflicts ongoing in the world? Ukraine is a leader in documenting sexual violence-based crimes during war. And how will these things be specifically documented? The evidence here is very particular because some women gave birth to the children as a result of rape.
Question. I guess that's for me. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think Markian, yes?
Yeah. Thank you very much for this very, very important question. Conflict-related sexual violence is one of our categories, and we intend to pay very, very close attention to developing the standard for evidence with respect to that category. That category has unique challenges in that not only there may be a limited scope of physical evidence, that physical evidence disappears over time, if I can be so insensitive to say that. These victims and survivors of these crimes are also deeply traumatized, and the conventional ways of getting that evidence, meaning going to that person and asking them again what had happened, maybe not the best way to go, because that has the great potential of re-traumatizing that individual. So there are a couple of fundamental approaches that we will be taking into account, and I say that with a caveat of making sure that we all understand that that work is still in our future, so I cannot be very certain about that. One, we follow the guidelines in international law for cases like that, that sometimes lessens the threshold of evidence for these categories, for these claims, taking into account the availability of evidence and practical availability of evidence to the victims and the ability of the victims to provide that evidence. So that standard may be lower. It definitely will be lower than the criminal law standard that is used in public prosecutions, but it can be also quite flexible. Second, we will place considerable emphasis on securing evidence that had already been given in other contexts. So if the victim has given a statement to a prosecutor or investigator or to a UN monitoring mission, we want to use that statement rather than ask the victim to provide another one. And in the end of the day, there's also witnesses to what had happened. And one of the benefits of our approach using this mass claims approach and big data, we can see patterns and we can match patterns. We can cross-reference individual statements to reports of general events that had taken at a certain location over a certain period of time, and that can help us arrive at a conclusion for what had happened. There, thankfully or regrettably, there are guidelines on how to deal with that kind of evidence and what level of trust to put in that evidence. But what we also have to make sure to create is a system where these claimants will come forward. Because as of right now, there's only about 300 cases recorded by the prosecutors for conflict-related sexual violence, whereas we all understand that the real number of these violations is much, much higher, regrettably. So we want to create an environment where these victims will be comfortable stepping forward and giving us those statements.
Thank you very much. I have to finish now the panel, excuse me, but thank you very much. I think what we can say is we saw here the political will of the Ukrainian side to continue even in the time of war, the reforms. Secondly, what we see is that we are already speaking about details of the reforms, what is very good because we are already building up on steps and periods of reform which have been made before. And secondly, I think what we heard also from you and from you, Ms. Secretary General, that we are very concrete already when it comes to the restoration of justice. And I think the authority of that work will also be projected in the world. And I think if the war, and it will change, and Russia will have to, I think Russia will not gain a victory, then your project also will be attractive for much more nations. And I think that is a good perspective. Thank you all. Thank you for cooperation. Thank you in preparation that great panel. I think we will continue to work on Ukraine's integration into European Union. Thank you.